Hello students, welcome to BYJU'S classes. Prelims is approaching and one of the best methods to revise your last year's geography along with the international current events, international relations current events would be through map. So without wasting any time, we would start our lecture for the day. Now in this, the first thing that we are going to do is about Africa. Now if you look at the political map of Africa, last year, our president, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, had gone to 3 African nations. They were Ghana, then Cote d'Ivoire, which was earlier known as Ivory Coast, and Namibia. Now, those who are aware of the fact that Cote d'Ivoire is the world's largest producer of cocoa. Similarly, Ghana too is known for the thing cocoa. Similarly, Namibia, which is a member of African Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty, is one of the largest producers of uranium, and India has signed treaty, but we haven't yet got uranium from them because of the fact that we aren't a member of NPT as such. Along with the president, our vice president also had gone to a number of nations of Africa last year, like Morocco, then Tunisia, 2 of the northern states in Africa. Along with this, he had gone to 2 more nations. One is here, the yellow one, that is Rwanda, and another is this pink one, that is Uganda. So our vice president had paid official visits to these 4 countries. Now, Morocco in the north is one of the major producers of phosphate and cobalt in the world. At the same time, though its capital is Rabat, its most important town is a very historic town by the name of Casablanca. Apart from this, the second country which we talked about was Tunisia. Now, everybody knows Tunisia is the cradle of the Arab Spring. Now, the Jasmine Revolution, which had triggered the Arab uprisings, started here only. Apart from these 2, the vice president had gone to these 2 of the central nations, out of which Rwanda is also known as Land of Thousand Hills. Apart from this, our Prime Minister had also visited 4 African nations, and his visits was to South Africa, to Mozambique, to Tanzania, and to Kenya. So, if you remember, Mozambique was the country with which we had signed the long-term agreement for the purchase of pulses. At the same time, Tanzania is the producer of almost 90% of the cloves in the world. Cloves. Now, Tanzania's old capital's name is Dar es Salaam. Then the third country to which he had visited was Kenya, which is famous for its tea plantation. Also, the President of Republic of Kenya had done a state visit to India last year. Along with that, South Africa is also rich and known for many different types of minerals like gold. Now, very important towns in South Africa, towns like Johannesburg, Pretoria, which is the administrative capital of South Africa. At the same time, Cape Town is the legislative capital of South Africa. Now, overall, these were the 11 countries which were visited by our president, our vice president, and our prime minister last year. Apart from this, the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, had paid official visit to India. Now, Egypt is here, and along with that, we have Suez Canal also here only. Now, apart from these, we have to remember that last year, our government had performed the operation which was known as Operation Sankat Mochan to rescue its own citizens, and that was performed to a place, one of the latest countries to be formed, that is South Sudan, with its capital Juba, J-U-B-A. Now, it was one of the biggest evacuation effort which was launched just after the previous one, that was Operation Rahat, which was carried out in Yemen. Now, along with these, we have to have an idea about one small country here with the name of Djibouti. Now, Djibouti is very important because of the fact that China is constructing its first overseas military base over here. And this base is just a few miles away from the Pentagon's largest and the most important foreign installations in that country. Now, apart from this, there is a concept which is Horn of Africa. Now, there are 4 countries in Horn of Africa. One is Somalia, infamous for the piracies that happen in and around this country. Along with that, the second country is Djibouti. The third country is Eritrea. And the fourth country in the Horn of Africa is Ethiopia. These 4 countries are a part of Horn of Africa. Then there is a very small island named Seychelles, where India has been granted land in the Assumption Island by the government of Seychelles to build its one of the first navy base outside its own country. Apart from that, we have a small island, Mauritius. Now, this nation, Mauritius, is involved with US and UK in the dispute about the US military base, which is known by the name of Diego Garcia. Now, this Diego Garcia is a part of the Indian Ocean Chagos archipelago. And this Chagos archipelago is also referred by the Britishers as British Indian Ocean Territory. So, a small group of islands here. So, these all were the important political events which happened last year in and around the continent of Africa. Now, moving ahead of this, now if you look at the physical map of Africa, one of the first things that we can see is this is the Great Rift Valley that stretches northwards through the countries of Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia, and extends into the Red Sea also. Now, this Great Rift Valley is almost about 5,000 kilometers long. And very close to this Great Rift Valley, we can see one small, in fact, not small, one large lake known as Lake Victoria, which is the largest lake of African continent, but this Lake Victoria is not a part of Great Rift Valley. Apart from this, we can also look 2 more lakes. One is Lake Tanganyika. Lake Tanganyika is a Rift Valley lake only. And it is the second largest lake in the continent of Africa. And then there is a third lake known as Lake Nyasa, one of the third largest lakes of Africa. Apart from these 3 lakes, we can also look at some prominent rivers. And the first prominent river is Orange River, which forms a natural boundary between the countries of South Africa and Namibia. Then there is another river very prominent in the south, which is known as Zambezi. And this forms the natural boundary between Zimbabwe and Zambia. Then we have a very important river you can see here, which is Congo. And the speciality about this river is it is one river which cuts equator twice. Then we have another river in the north by the name of Niger. It flows into the Gulf of Guinea, and it is the third largest river of African continent. And the most important river in this continent is the Nile River, which starts from Lake Victoria and falls into the Mediterranean Sea. longest river of the world, has got some very important dams like Owen Dam, Sennar Dam, and Aswan Dam. Now, this is all about the rivers as far as the African continent is concerned. And then we can look at some of the important deserts of this continent. Now, the most important desert is Sahara in the northern part of this continent. Then we have another desert near the Atlantic Ocean, that is the Namib Desert. And then we have a third desert over here that's known as Kalahari Desert, which is also home to one of the primitive tribes of Africa known as Kalahari Bushmen. Apart from this, there is one more special feature that we like to talk about here is Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest peak of this entire continent, but it is not part of any mountain range. It is standalone in itself. And then in the northwest, we have the mountain ranges known by the name of Atlas Mountain Range. Now, moving ahead, we've moved to another important continent, that is North America. Now, North America is made up of two very important nations. One is Canada and another is United States of America. Now, as far as the Canada is concerned, this is the second largest country in the world with its capital at Ottawa. Now, Vancouver is one of the very important towns which is there in this province, British Columbia. Apart from this, we have the Newfoundlands, which is the headquarters of Grand Banks here. Very famous place for the fishing. Then we also have Toronto, which is the biggest town, biggest city of Canada in the state of Ontario. Apart from this, not much is important as far as the political geography of Canada is concerned. So we'll move to the country USA. Now, when we look at this, made up of 50 states, with its smallest state, Hawaii, and the largest state, Alaska. Now, if we look at this, all the 49 states are attached to the mainland America except Hawaii. And Alaska is not connected to the mainland America. Apart from this, last year, one of the very important things that happened as far as America was concerned was when President Trump had pulled America out of TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a group of 12 countries. Now, he did this on the very first day of him assuming the office, which he had promised during his election manifesto, and he withdrew it. And now TPP, which was an agreement, which was a trade agreement among the 12 countries, apart from USA, it had two of its immediate neighbors, one in North and South, Canada and Mexico, then two nations in the South America, that is Peru and Chile, and then two nations in Australia and New Zealand, and 5 nations in Asia, that is Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Vietnam, Japan. These were the 12 nations which were a part of TPP, which was signed in around 2006 to ensure that the flow of goods is eased, services and investments are eased, and to strengthen the rules on labor standards. So always remember, now TPP has got only 11 nations because America is no longer a part of TPP. Apart from this, as far as America was concerned, last year, UN General Assembly had also passed a declaration by the name of New York Declaration, which was signed by the leaders of 193 member states. And this was the first ever summit which addressed large movement of refugees and migrants. Large number of refugees and migrants. So this was your New York Declaration. Now, moving ahead of the political map of North America, we move to the physical map of North America. Now, if we look at the physical map of North America, the first and the foremost and the most important thing for the prelims is group of 5 lakes, also together known as Great Lakes. Now, their names are, always try to remember, HOMES. That is S for Superior. This one, Superior, which is second largest lake of the world. And of course, the first one is Caspian Sea. Then we have just below this one is Lake Michigan. Only lake out of these all 5 which entirely falls in USA. Then the third lake is Erie. This one. Then fourth lake is Ontario. Now this is in the north, and Ontario is the smallest of all the 5 Great Lakes, and the last one is Huron. So you can remember the 5 Great Lakes, their names by the acronym HOMES. H for Huron, O for Ontario, M for Michigan, E for Erie, S for Superior. Superior being the largest and Ontario being the smallest. Now, apart from the lakes, if we look at some of the important straits, one of the very important strait is Davis Strait. Strait that separates Greenland and this island that is a part of Canada is known as Baffin Island. Then we have another strait that separates Alaska and Russia. Now this strait is known as Bering Strait. Now apart from the straits, if we look at, there are some very important bays also. One of them is Hudson Bay, which is north of the Canada. Then we have some important gulfs like Gulf of Mexico, which is east of the Central America and is part of the Atlantic Ocean. Apart from these, we have a Gulf of California, which is between the California of America and Mexico. Then we have a small gulf also in the south of Alaska, that is Gulf of Alaska. These were some of the important gulfs as far as the America was concerned. Now, if we talk about the important mountain ranges of North America, in Alaska we have the Brooks Ranges, and throughout the western coast of the North America we have 3 different ranges which are very much parallel to each other. All these 3 together are known as Western Cordillera. The innermost of them, which comes till here, is known by the name of Rocky Mountain. The first one, which is closest to the coast, also gets its name from there, that is Coast Mountain. And the middle one is known as Cascade Range, which in the south is also known as, in and around the California, it is also known as Sierra Nevada. So now moving from North America, we move to South America. Now, if we look at South America, politically, last year, in the whole South America continent, which has some 13 countries, 2 of the countries were very much in news. One was the biggest country of this continent, Brazil, because of the fact that the president of that country, Dilma Rousseff, was stripped of her presidency. After a 13-year leftist rule in Latin America's biggest economy, she was ousted from power. Other important country which was in news last year was Colombia, where the government had signed the deal with FARC rebels, FARC, FARC rebels, and the ceasefire and disarmament had led to an end of civil war. Apart from this, last year was also important for the fact that 17th summit of non-alignment movement had taken place in the country Venezuela. Now in Venezuela, it had exactly taken place in Margarita. In the north, a very small island. You can see Venezuela is one of the northern countries of the South America continent. And here, this Margarita is a small island in the north of North Venezuela. And this time summit, which was the 17th summit, was very important from the perspective of India, because this time India was represented by vice president and not by the prime minister, as has been the usual practice. And this has been the only second time from the time of its existence that our prime minister did not attend this summit. And last time it happened was when Mr. Chaudhry Charan Singh was the Prime Minister of India in the year 1979, and in the Havana summit of that year, the Prime Minister had not gone. And then he was the caretaker Prime Minister of India. Moving ahead of South America's political, we move to the physical map of South America. Now in South America, we have the Amazon basin, which is made up of the river Amazon, which is the second longest river of the world after Nile, and passing through the countries of Peru and Brazil. This basin is covered with dense equatorial forests, which are locally also known as selvas. To the south of the selvas, we have the Gran Chacos, which are the warm temperate grasslands, and locally they are known as the hunting land. Then to the south of Gran Chacos, we have another grasslands which occupy almost 20% of the country, Argentina. The name of it is Pampas. Now, it is a temperate grassland and one of the richest regions when it comes to grain productions in the whole world. Then apart from these grasslands, in the south, we have Patagonia Plateau, which lies in the leeward side of the mountains, and that's why there is less rainfall, and they lie on the leeward sides of the mountains whose name is Andes. So this is mountain range Andes, and to the west of Andes we have here in Chile a desert known as Atacama Desert, which is the driest desert in the whole world. Now this desert is very rich in gold, copper, etc., and also is full of many salt lakes. Apart from this, the Andes mountain system, which starts from the north and goes till south, is the second longest mountain system in the whole world after the mighty Himalayas. Then there is a small island which is known by the name of Falkland Islands in the south of this continent, which is a disputed territory. Both Argentina and UK claim it to be a part of theirs, and already they have fought a war for this islands, and this island presently is occupied by United Kingdom. To the north of South America, we have the Caribbean Sea, which is home of many small countries which are also known as Caribbean countries, and the most important amongst them is Cuba with its capital in Havana. And Cuba for the last a few years has started to improve its relations with USA, which were in doldrums for a very long past. Apart from this, there are other small group of islands like Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, then Dominican Republic, Haiti, and many such. Now, moving ahead of South America, we move to another continent, that is Europe. Now, in Europe, we have European Union, which is a group of 28 member states, and these 28 states have internal single market through a standardized system of laws that apply to all these states. Now, this monetary union came in 1999, and as of now, the monetary union comprises of 19 nations, also known as Eurozone. Apart from this 19 states, we have 3 states, that is Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, who are part of EEA, European Economic Area. They have a separate secretariat in Brussels, and they manage the relationship between the EU and EEA. They make contributions to EU budget, and thus they stay out of EU but have the access to this single market. Now, just for a fact, Liechtenstein is the only one out of the 2 nations in the whole world which is doubly landlocked. What it is and which is the second nation, I'll tell you later in the lecture. Now, apart from this, we have a very small nation in Europe with the name of Cyprus. Last year, the Indian government had rescinded a notification that had blacklisted this country, and thus had provided a lot of relief to all the investors who route their investments through this island, which is in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, last year, the Cyprus president had also come to India. Apart from these, last year, the Prime Minister of Portugal had also visited India in the month of January for the 14th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. And he was the chief guest for this visit. Then here there is a group of countries which are known by the name of Scandinavian countries, and they are 1 Iceland, 2nd Denmark, 3rd Norway, 4th Sweden, and 5th. These 5 countries together are known as Scandinavian countries. Apart from this, 3 countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These 3 combinedly are also known as Baltic states, known after the Baltic Sea. Now, also after the disintegration of USSR had broken into 15 states, with Russia being the largest of all. Out of these 15, 10 are in Europe. First being Russia, the next 3 being Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, that is 2, 3, 4. 5th is Belarusia, 6th is Moldavia, 7th is Georgia, 8th Armenia, 9th Azerbaijan, and the 10th nation is Ukraine, with which Russia was involved in a bloody battle regarding the Crimea. Apart from this, last year our Prime Minister had also gone to different places in Europe like Spain, France, Switzerland, and Germany. Now, moving to the physical map, we can see Greenland, which is the world's largest island. It's a part of Denmark as the country. Then we have Iceland with its capital at Reykjavik, which is the northernmost capital in the entire world. Apart from these, if we look at this map, we have UK is separated from the mainland through a channel which is known as English Channel. Then to the east of this, we have Baltic Sea, which gives the name Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia as a group as Baltic states. Then there is a gulf which is known as Gulf of Bothnia, which separates Sweden and Finland. And then there is a smaller gulf which is known as Gulf of Finland, which is separating Estonia with Finland. Then there are some prominent seas coming from the north, one is the White Sea over here. Then there is another sea which is here, the Black Sea. Then we have the third sea, Mediterranean Sea. And the part of this sea only, we have a sea which is known as Adriatic Sea, which separates Italy with Albania and Bosnia, etc. Then we have a small bay, that is Bay of Biscay, which separates France with Spain, and a small gulf here in the south, that is Gulf of Lions, which lies to the south of France. Along with these, we have a very, very important strait here, Strait of Gibraltar, which separates the Europe from North Africa. Apart from these, if we look at the mountains that are in this country, we can see in Spain we have Sierra Morena. Going beyond the Spain, we have small range known as Pyrenees. Then the most important range of Europe, the Alps mountain is here with its highest peak known as Mount Blanc, which is around 4,800 meters. Then we have another very important peak known as Mount Etna in the Sicily part of Italy. Then we have another mountain ranges here in the form of Carpathian Mountains. And finally, we have Ural Mountains, which are around an average height of around 500 to 800 meters. And it gives the natural boundary between Europe and Asia. Moving ahead, we come to the small continent of Australia. And here, the most important thing is we'll be doing the physical as well as the political together. We can see some important towns, for example, Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, and finally Brisbane. 6 important towns. Now the question can be arrange them from east to west. So Perth, then Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Brisbane, or west to east. You can see it's very arranged in that manner. At the same time, there can be a question regarding the north to south also. So it starts from Brisbane to Sydney to Canberra to Melbourne. Then we have another important town with the name of Hobart, which is in the island of Tasmania, which is separated from the mainland Australia by the strait which is known as Bass Strait. Very important feature of Australian continent is the Great Barrier Reef, which is in the northeast part of this, famous for its coral islands. Apart from this, Australia is separated from Timor and East Timor from Timor Sea. Then to the northeast of Australia, we have a country known as Papua New Guinea. Last year, our president had gone to this country too. Then we across the Tasman Sea, we have the country New Zealand, where too our president had gone last year. And within Australia, if we look, there are some important deserts known by the name of Gibson Desert, Great Victorian Desert. The interiors of this country is very hot, and at places it's all about the deserts. Then there is a third desert known as Simpson Desert. And one of the very important physical features about Australia is the Great Dividing Range, which moves from the north to south via the Bass Strait, even enters the Tasmania. And the capital of this country is Canberra. Moving ahead of Australia, we move to our neighborhood, that is India and Pakistan. Now, last year, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, during his independence speech, had taken the names of some of these places like Gilgit, northern areas. Now, the place which they call as Azad Kashmir, this whole area is Pakistan, occupied Kashmir. Then this is the area which is illegally occupied by China. And if we look at the total map of Pakistan, the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which starts from Kashgar in China, passes through the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, that is from Gilgit-Baltistan, and it reaches the strategic port of Gwadar. Apart from this brown area is known as Saksham Valley, which was gifted to China by Pakistan in the early 1960s. And this green color portion is the Siachen Glacier. We have already talked about this in huge detail when we have done the Gilgit-Baltistan issue. So you can go ahead and watch that video. Apart from that, you can see through a very narrow corridor, Afghanistan meets India, and this area is known as Wakhan Corridor. And that's how Afghanistan becomes a neighboring country of ours, though this area is illegally occupied by Pakistan. Moving ahead, we can see this is Maldives, and now it is very much in news because of the political problems that this country is seeing for the last few years. Apart from that, from our perspective, it is very important because Maldives gets separated from Lakshadweep by this 8-degree channel. Along with that, Maldives is very much in news because it became one of the most recent country to pull itself out of the Commonwealth. Last country to do this was the Western African nation of Gambia, which has done this in 2013. After that, this was the first country to do it. Now, with its capital at Malé. Now, last year, there was a flurry of activities concerning the West Asia. Now, our Prime Minister had gone to the biggest country in this region, that is Saudi Arabia. Apart from this, the Crown Prince of UAE, the Mohammed bin Zayed bin Sultan, and the Deputy Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of Abu Dhabi was the chief guest of our Republic Day. Apart from this, our Prime Minister had also visited the small country of Qatar, which is these days in news because of the fact that it has got into trouble with its immediate neighbors like Saudi Arabia and UAE. And in spite of being a member of all these nations, being a member of Gulf Cooperation Council, they have cut off all their diplomatic ties with this country. Apart from this, we can see very small country of Bahrain to be over here. Then small country of Kuwait, which was attacked by Iraq during 1991 Gulf War. To the immediate north of Saudi Arabia. To the immediate south of Saudi Arabia, we have a nation, Yemen, which is the poorest in this entire neighborhood. To the west of this, we have Red Sea, which separates the African continent with the West Asian countries. To the north, we have Jordan, and to its north, we have the country Syria, which is engulfed in a lot of internal civil war. To the west of this, Jordan, we also have the Israel, and here only we have Palestine. Closer to us, we also have the country Iran, with which we seem to have good relations, and again, at times we also share some frosty relations, a bit of hot and cold as far as our relations are concerned with this country. We are building a very important port here, which is named Chabahar Port, which will be very close to the Gwadar port of Pakistan, and which will serve as the gateway for India to Afghanistan, Central Asia, and even to Europe. And once this port is fully developed, it will be connected to Afghanistan via the road that is Dilaram Zaran's highway. Now, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, their president, Mr. Ghani, had come to our country. Along with that, our Prime Minister had also visited there for the inauguration of the dam known as Salma Dam, which is renamed as India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam. And then there is one more country in the West Asia, that is Oman. To the east of it, we have Gulf of Oman. And between these, we have the Persian Gulf, which is full of oil. Then here we can see India and Pakistan, both of them this year have become the member of SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And apart from this, you can see the Central Asian nations, the 5 Stan countries, the Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Tajikistan being the most closest to India. And as I said earlier, Uzbekistan is the second country in the whole world to be doubly landlocked. Now, you can see what double landlocked is. A country which is surrounded by, let's say, any number of states, and all those states, let's see, X, Y, Z be the 3 states which have surrounded a country called A. And if these X, Y, Z are also surrounded by nations, so they themselves are landlocked, and then they have landlocked another country. That's why this country becomes doubly landlocked. And as such, in the world, there is only 2 such countries, that is Liechtenstein and Uzbekistan. And here also you can see Uzbekistan is surrounded by Afghanistan, which is a landlocked country, Turkmenistan, which is a landlocked country. Do not get confused with this. It is Caspian Sea, world's largest lake. Apart from this, you can see on this side there is Kyrgyzstan, on the north there is Kazakhstan, and these countries are surrounded by countries like China, Russia, and thus they themselves are landlocked, and thus they make Uzbekistan doubly landlocked. Apart from this, now just like we saw in the West Asian nations, there is a lot of flurry of activities going, our Prime Minister going over there, the dignitaries from that side coming to this side. Similarly, based on our Act East policy, even the Eastern countries are seeing a lot of activities, and especially in the ASEAN member countries, which has 10 member nations, only one of them is a neighbor of ours, that is Myanmar. Apart from that, very important nation, Indonesia, their president had come to our country last year. Malaysia, their Prime Minister, Mr. Najib Razak, had come to our country last year. Similarly, Singapore, one of the most advanced nations in this part, their Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Loong, had visited India. And Singapore is the place where the famous Shangri-La dialogues take place, which last year was graced by our then Defense Minister, Mr. Manohar Parrikar. And this year, because of some protocol issues, we have dropped our participation as far as this dialogue is concerned. Apart from this, out of these 10 countries, one of the best friends that we have cultivated over the last few years is Vietnam, with whom we are having a very close tie, a strategic partnership, and we have also signed defense agreements with them. Our Prime Minister had attended the 14th ASEAN Summit, which occurred last year, the 14th ASEAN India Summit, and the 11th East Asia Summit, which had taken place in the capital of Laos, in Vientiane. Apart from these, Philippines is another very important nation. Brunei is a smaller nation which is a part of this ASEAN, and Cambodia and Thailand are the rest 2 nations which make up the 10 member states of ASEAN. In the East Asia Summit, there are 8 more countries, including India, China, Japan, South Korea, Russia, USA, Australia, and New Zealand. So these are 8 other countries which are part of East Asia Summit, which happened along with the ASEAN India Summit at the same place in Laos capital. Apart from this, if we look at the country Japan, it is composed of 4 islands, 4 major islands, and arranging it from north to south, we get Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu, that is H, H, S, and then again K. So this is the arrangement of all these 4 islands. Now moving ahead, just having a small talk about India too, if we just look at this Indian map and we see Pakistan shares borders with 4 states, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab and Kashmir. Similarly, Bhutan and Myanmar also share boundaries with only 4 states, like Bhutan shares boundary with Sikkim, West Bengal, Assam and Arunachal, just like Pakistan with 4. And Myanmar shares borders with Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram. So again 4. But when we talk about countries like Bangladesh, it shares borders with 5 states, West Bengal 1, Tripura 2, Mizoram 3, Meghalaya 4 and Assam 5. Similarly, China also shares boundaries with 5 states, Kashmir 1, Himachal 2nd, Uttarakhand 3rd, Sikkim 4th and Arunachal 5th. And Nepal also shares boundaries with 5 states like Uttarakhand 1, UP 2nd, Bihar 3rd, West Bengal 4th and Sikkim 5th. So 3 countries have 5 states with which they are sharing borders. 3 countries are there which are sharing borders with 4 states. 1 state shares border with only 1 country. And our last neighbor, Sri Lanka, does not have a direct connection. There is a sea between both of them, that is Park Strait. And thus, this is all about the states. Apart from this, if the question is, which state shares the borders with maximum number of other states, then the answer to that would be Uttar Pradesh. You can see it shares borders with Uttarakhand 1, Himachal 2nd, Haryana 3rd, Rajasthan 4th, Madhya Pradesh 5th, Chhattisgarh 6th, Jharkhand 7th, Bihar 8th. That is 8 states plus 1 UT in the form of Delhi plus 1 neighboring country. And second to it is Assam, which shares borders with 7 states, 1 Arunachal, 2nd Meghalaya, 3rd Nagaland, 4th Manipur, 5th Mizoram, 6th Tripura and 7th West Bengal. But it also shares boundary with 2 countries, that is Bangladesh and Bhutan. So here there are 7 states, no union territory plus 2 neighbors. Now if there is a question, name the states that have only 1 state as their neighbors, then the answer to this question would be Meghalaya is 1 state which has only 1 state, that is Assam, as its neighbor. And second such state is Sikkim, which is only bordering West Bengal. Apart from this, if there is a question that how many states through which Tropic of Cancer passes, the answer to that would be 8. Gujarat number 1, Rajasthan 2nd, Madhya Pradesh 3rd, Chhattisgarh 4th, Jharkhand 5th, West Bengal 6th, Tripura 7th and Mizoram 8th. So if the question is through how many states the 82.5 degree east passes, the answer to that would be 5. That is UP, MP, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. That is UP, MP, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. These would be the only 5 states through which 82.5 degree east passes. Thank you.